You have more sympathy for the criminal than the victim, don't you? Do you know Micah Smith?
Michael Smith, Senator?
Micah, M-I-C-H. I bet the victims of Micah Smith remember Micah Smith. If you don't, Mr. Smith molested a 4-year-old girl, didn't he? Mr. Smith molested a 9-year-old girl, didn't he? This is what you said at Mr. Micah's sentencing. These are your words, not mine. What I can say, you said, is that this is a very tragic situation of a person who has a lot of good in him. A lot of good in him. Having done a very reprehensible thing to 2 young children, causing extreme damage.
The moment Senator John Kennedy brought up the nominee's past comments about a convicted child predator, the entire room froze. Seriously, you could almost feel the panic through the screen. Then Kennedy hit her with one brutal line. I bet the victims remember the name. That changed everything.
You have more sympathy for the criminal than the victim, don't you?
Senator, I worked on behalf of victims of crime zealously as a prosecutor. As a judge, I listened carefully to understand impact on victims, and I have always take that into account.
Do you know Micah Smith?
Michael Smith, Senator?
Micah, M-I-C-H.
I don't believe I know a Micah Smith, Senator, no.
Okay. I bet the victims of Micah Smith remember Micah Smith. If you don't.
Senator, there was a defendant I sentenced named Michael Smith.
Mr. Smith molested a 4-year-old girl, didn't he?
Senator, he was convicted after trial of unlawful sexual contact under Maine law.
That's a nice way of putting it.
That was the charge, Senator.
Right. Mr. Smith molested a 9-year-old girl, didn't he?
Senator, again, he was convicted of unlawful sexual contact against 2 children. In that case, I did impose the sentence the state requested.
This is what you said at Mr. Micah's sentencing. These are your words, not mine. What I can say, you said, is that this is a very tragic situation of a person who has a lot of good in him. A lot of good in him. Having done a very reprehensible thing to 2 young children, causing extreme damage. Did I read that correctly?
Senator, in that case, I imposed the sentence the state requested.
Did I read your quotation correctly?
Senator, that, I think, is a portion of what I said at sentencing. My focus was on...
But the words I read, are they correct?
That's what was reported in the paper, Senator. I have not seen a transcript of the sentencing.
I bet the victims remember, Judge. You might have forgotten, just like you forgot his name. But I bet the victims remember. And then you handed down a sentence. You gave Mr. Smith 12 years, but you suspended 6 of them, didn't you?
Senator, that was at the recommendation of the state because
but it was your ruling. Is that an accurate statement of your ruling?
Senator, I accepted the state's recommendation that 6 years should be suspended so that Mr. Smith would be required to participate in sex offender treatment.
I appreciate the lengthy explanation, but I think it's a pretty simple question. That was your sentence, right?
Yes, I imposed the sentence the state requested in that case.
What started as a routine confirmation hearing suddenly turned into what looked like a live televised cross-examination. The second Senator John Kennedy brought up the nominee's past comments about a convicted child predator. The entire room got uncomfortable, and I mean immediately uncomfortable. At one point, Kennedy basically had the nominee cornered over comments describing the offender as someone who had a lot of good in him. Yeah, not exactly the sentence Americans want to hear connected to crimes involving children. And the more Kennedy pressed, the more awkward it got. Seriously, you could almost hear staffers in the background thinking this is going viral by tonight. All right, so here's what happened. During this Senate confirmation hearing, Kennedy questioned a Democratic judicial nominee over a sentencing decision involving a man convicted of unlawful sexual contact against 2 young girls. One was reportedly 4 years old, the other was 9. Now, the nominee kept using the formal legal wording during the hearing, but Kennedy wasn't really letting the conversation stay in technical legal language mode. He kept bringing it back to the victims and the actual nature of the crimes. And honestly, that's where the tension came from. Because there's this growing frustration people have with elite institutions where everything gets wrapped in polished terminology instead of plain English. Americans hear phrases like unlawful sexual contact and they're thinking, wait, what exactly are we talking about here? Kennedy then pulled out comments the nominee reportedly made during sentencing, where she described the offender as a person who has a lot of good in him, despite what she also called a reprehensible act. And wow, the room changed instantly after that. The nominee tried to defend herself by saying she imposed the sentence prosecutors requested, which, to be fair, is an important legal point. But Kennedy clearly wasn't focused only on procedure. He was questioning the mindset behind those comments. That's what made this exchange so intense. Here's the part that really stood out to me. Kennedy kept asking very direct questions, and the nominee kept giving these long, carefully structured legal answers that never fully addressed the emotional core of what he was asking. You know when someone answers a question without actually answering it? Yeah, it started feeling a lot like that. Now look, judges absolutely have to follow legal standards, sentencing structures, recommendations from prosecutors, all of that. Nobody serious is denying that. But this hearing wasn't really about whether the sentence was technically allowed. It was about something deeper. What kind of philosophy guides someone sitting on the bench? Because Americans expect judges to have compassion, sure, but they also expect moral clarity, especially in cases involving children. And that's why Kennedy's line about the victims remembering the offender's name hit so hard.